My name's Michelle. I met Robert about 4 years ago. He came and spoke where I worked, and what he spoke on that day was just about headaches, and it worked on some people that were my coworkers. But one interesting aspect was this one girl had a headache, and so he was tapping on it, and all of a sudden she started crying. So I was asking him some more questions about that, and he was saying sometimes when you have a headache, it's not about the headache. There's something else going on. That's just the physical aspect of maybe what she didn't want to talk about, whatever it was. I went to a weekend seminar, and that's when we addressed the Coca-Cola issue, my addiction with Coca-Cola. I was drinking at least 2 liters a day. I drink, matter of fact, I don't even remember the last time I had some. Like if I go to the movies, I might have a drink or two of it. It doesn't even appeal to me at all anymore. And that happened pretty quick. And so we dealt with that. And I started thinking, I had something happen to me when I was very young, about 7, and a very traumatic thing. And I had been to... Matter of fact, I had kind of repressed it until I was in my 30s, and all these memories of this started flooding back. So the first thing you do, you go to your doctor. Okay, you need to go to a psychiatrist or psychologist for this. So I go. All right, tell me your story. I barely get it out. Okay, we need to put you on some meds right now. So they write the meds out, and they give me the meds. I come back a little bit. Now, how are you feeling? Pretty doped up, really. But, how's the other part? Well, I was so doped up, I didn't deal with that emotion. And so when I went to the seminar with Robert, I brought this up to him, and I couldn't really tell the story. I reached a point where I couldn't go through with it, and then I could tell a little bit more of the story. Because when you tell it, even though I was 7 at the time, when you start telling the story, you become 7 again. It all comes back. My younger sister was murdered, and I saw this. I was 7, she was 5. We were alone at the house, alcoholic father, mother just kind of, she was abused, and they had left, and someone had broken into the house, basically. We were under the bed. My sister had to go to the restroom. I begged her not to go, but she went to the restroom, and she was coming out. This man was coming in. I was under the bed. I heard, thumping noises, which were apparently him throwing her against the wall, whatever. And he dragged her into the bedroom. I'm still under the bed. And what I see, and now I can almost put myself, I see it, but I'm not there anymore. And what I see is his black boot on her throat, pressing down, and he kills her, basically. And I just stay under the bed. Talk about some guilt. Because I was thinking like an adult. I thought, why didn't I get up, grab a lamp, and just bang him over the head with it? Well, because I was 7 years old, And when my parents came back, or my stepfather, and I told them, they said, and I knew who it was. I said, I know who it is. I said, it's your son. I told my stepfather, it was your son. It was Eric. It was him. And they're like, no, honey, it wasn't, because you were with us. We thought both of you girls were with us, but we didn't realize that, we left Melissa behind until later. And you were with us. You didn't see anything like that, So the police come, and zilch. I say nothing because, you want to please mom. You don't want to. So I didn't say a word. I guess I repressed this for years and years and still believed what they told me. Some stranger came into the house, killed her. He was later caught because he killed another little girl. So, eventually he was caught. But I started having these flashbacks of this, and they were a lot to deal with. And so Robert and I talked about them. And I got where I could tell the story, and I got off the antidepressants, and I was on 6 at one point. They had me on 6 antidepressants, including Xanax and all kinds of things. I got off of all of those. I can now tell the story, which, believe me, a few years ago, I couldn't have got through just the thought of it would have just, I would have broke down. I confronted my mother on it, big step there. I even went into, I was in a psychiatric ward even for a while, and met an FBI agent there, and he actually did some research for me and found out some information where this guy was. He's in prison. He'll be there the rest of his life, which gave me a lot of peace of mind also. And but what I would find is when I would start feeling those feelings, I'd remember the tapping, and I would just tap on that feeling and tap on the sadness. And sometimes you don't even know what you're tapping on. You just, okay, this is sadness, 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 sadness. And during this time, too, I was married to an alcoholic husband, and not an abusive one at all. Drank at home, which I wish he would have went out and drank, but he was one of those bingers that starts at home and stays at home. I was going through all that, started tapping on that, and pretty soon removed myself from that situation. Filed for divorce. We became divorced, but an interesting thing is the day I went to court, I hadn't seen him, and I was going to court that day, and I went and saw Robert for a private session because I just knew, I didn't know what was going to happen when I saw him in court, how I was going to react. And I get into the courthouse, it's completely full, except for maybe a spot about this big. So I sit down, and I look up, and he walks in. Only place to sit, right smack next to me. I am tapping like crazy, And he sits down, and he's like, you seem different. And I said, really? I said, well, I've just accepted some facts about myself and my choices and all this. And he goes, you've been going to like a psychiatrist or something? I said, no, I've just been tapping. And he's like, okay. And I managed to just stay really calm and collected. And he tried to talk to me afterwards, and I was like, I really have nothing. There was a time when I could be pulled back into that, oh, well, let me explain this to you. And I thought, why? Why explain it? And it just has made me so much stronger in my convictions. And so now actually we're friends. He sobered up and we became friends. And I've even tapped on him. He had some knee problems, and I actually tapped on him for his knee problems. And I tap all the time. I did it today. Matter of fact, a girl at work had a headache, tapped on it. It was gone. And so I use it for that. And so then I thought I had gained probably 100 pounds during at least 100 pounds during my marriage. And I thought, if it's working on my job, it's working on my, everything I'm doing, why not go ahead and try the weight loss? So I went to the seminar, and I started tapping when I was hungry. I would tap, am I really hungry? After I tapped for about 5 minutes, if I was hungry, I would eat. But I would find I would stop when I was full. I thought, okay, it's working on this. How about exercise? I hate to exercise. What if I start tapping on that? So I started to say, and I would tap like, I always say the desire, the desire to exercise, the desire to exercise. Pretty soon I noticed I'd come home from work, and I thought, I feel like going and walking. So put on my stuff and go walking. Now I'm up to running. I run about 5 miles 3 or 4 times a week, and I tap the whole time sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to do it so bad, and I just start tapping, and by the time I get home, before I know it, I'm changed clothes, I'm out on the track. I've lost 95 pounds. I still have 15 more to go. Yeah. It's taken about 18 months, but, that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't matter. I tap at the casinos, and I win. I went to Santa Fe a couple years ago with my cousin. This is kind of funny. And all the way to Santa Fe. She goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm tapping because I want to win. You're an idiot. No, I'm going to win. So we get there, and I walk in, win $1,500. So we get back to the room, and she's like, tap on me, please. I'm like, no, you blew it. You lost your chance on that one. I ended up winning 900 more on there. I know, it was amazing. Now, I don't go all the time because I don't want to push it, but, when I do go, I visualize a lot of it.